The year was 1974, and the streets of Chicago's South Side were buzzing with tension. Racial divides still ran deep through the city, creating invisible lines that separated communities and sparked conflicts that could ignite at any moment. On this particular autumn afternoon, the crisp October air carried more than just the scent of fallen leaves. It carried the weight of injustice that was about to unfold. 17-year-old Marcus Washington was walking home from his part-time job at the local grocery store, his worn sneakers scuffing against the cracked sidewalk. The teenager had been working extra hours to help his mother pay the bills, sacrificing his free time and social life for the responsibility that had been thrust upon him far too early. His backpack hung heavy on his shoulders, filled with textbooks he hoped to crack open later that evening, dreaming of a future beyond the struggles that surrounded his daily life. As Marcus turned the corner onto Ashland Avenue, he noticed a group of older white men gathered outside a local diner. Their voices were loud, their gestures aggressive, and their eyes immediately locked onto the young black teenager walking alone. The atmosphere shifted instantly, like storm clouds gathering before a downpour. Marcus felt his heart rate quicken, but he kept his head down and continued walking, hoping to pass by unnoticed. "Hey, boy!" one of them shouted, his voice cutting through the afternoon air like a blade. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" Marcus stopped, his hands trembling slightly as he turned to face the group. He had encountered situations like this before, but it never got easier. The fear was always there, lurking beneath the surface, reminding him of the harsh realities of growing up black in America during the 70s. "I'm just walking home, sir," Marcus replied respectfully, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through his veins. He had been taught by his mother to always remain polite, even in the face of hostility, believing that respect might diffuse dangerous situations. The men laughed mockingly, their faces twisted with prejudice and hatred. "This ain't your neighborhood, kid. You better turn around and go back where you came from before something bad happens to you." Marcus felt his chest tighten with a mixture of anger and helplessness. He knew he had every right to walk these streets, but he also understood the dangerous reality of challenging these men. The weight of generations of oppression seemed to press down on his young shoulders as he stood there, caught between dignity and survival. Just as the situation was escalating, with the men beginning to move closer to Marcus, a familiar figure emerged from the crowd of onlookers that had begun to gather. Muhammad Ali, the heavyweight champion of the world, was walking down the street after finishing his afternoon training session at his nearby gym. His presence was unmistakable, the confident stride, the powerful build, and the aura of someone who had never backed down from a fight, whether in the ring or in life. Ali had been in Chicago for several weeks, preparing for an upcoming fight, but more importantly, he had been spending time in the community, connecting with young people and using his platform to address social issues. He believed deeply in using his fame and influence to make a positive impact, especially for those who couldn't defend themselves. When Ali saw what was happening to Marcus, something ignited within him. This wasn't just about one teenager being harassed. This was about everything he had fought against his entire career. The injustice, the prejudice, the systematic oppression that kept people like Marcus living in fear simply because of the color of their skin. "What's going on here?" Ali's voice boomed across the street as he approached the group, his presence immediately commanding attention from everyone within earshot. The men who had been intimidating Marcus suddenly found themselves face to face with one of the most famous and respected athletes in the world. The leader of the group, a stocky man in his 40s with graying hair and cold eyes, tried to maintain his aggressive posture. "This is none of your business, Ali. We're just having a conversation with this boy about where he belongs." Ali stepped closer, positioning himself between Marcus and the group of men. His eyes were focused and determined, the same look he wore when facing opponents in the ring. "Any conversation involving harassment and intimidation becomes my business. especially when it involves a young man who's done nothing wrong except walk down a public street. The tension in the air was palpable. Bystanders had stopped to watch the confrontation unfold, some pulling out cameras, others whispering among themselves about witnessing Muhammad Ali in action outside of the boxing ring. Marcus stood behind the champion, still trembling but feeling a surge of hope and protection he had never experienced before. "You think, because you're famous, you can come here and tell us what to do?" Another man from the group challenged, his voice filled with resentment and barely contained rage. Ali's response was calm but firm, his words carrying the weight of someone who had faced much worse opposition throughout his career. "I think, because I'm a human being who believes in justice and equality, I can stand up for what's right. This young man has every right to walk these streets without being threatened or intimidated." The crowd around them continued to grow, with people emerging from nearby shops and apartments to witness the confrontation. Some were recording with small handheld cameras, understanding that they were witnessing something significant. The energy was electric, charged with the possibility of either violence or a powerful moment of social justice. Marcus found his voice, emboldened by Ali's presence and support. "I work at Henderson's grocery 3 blocks from here. I've been walking this route home for 2 years. I've never caused any trouble for anyone." Ali nodded approvingly at Marcus's courage to speak up. "You hear that? This young man is working, contributing to this community, trying to build a better life for himself. What are you contributing besides fear and hatred?" The question hung in the air, like a challenge that none of the men seemed prepared to answer. Their aggressive posture began to waver as they realized they were outnumbered not just by the growing crowd, but by the moral authority that Ali represented. One of the younger men in the group seemed uncomfortable with the situation and began backing away. "Maybe we should just let this go, guys. It's not worth the trouble." But the leader wasn't ready to back down completely. "This neighborhood has been changing, and not for the better. We have a right to protect what's ours." Ali's eyes flashed with controlled anger. "Protect what's yours. These streets belong to everyone who lives here, works here, and contributes to this community. Fear and prejudice aren't protecting anything. They're destroying the very fabric of what makes a neighborhood strong." The champion turned to address the growing crowd, his voice rising so everyone could hear. "This young man represents the future, someone willing to work hard, pursue education, and build something positive. If we can't protect and support our youth, what kind of community are we?" The crowd began to murmur in agreement, with several people stepping forward to show their support for Marcus and Ali's stance. An elderly black woman approached and placed her hand on Marcus's shoulder. "I've seen this boy walking to and from work every day. He's respectful, polite, and never causes any trouble." A middle-aged white man who owned a nearby barbershop also spoke up. "Ali's right. We should be encouraging young people who are trying to do the right thing, not tearing them down because of ignorance and fear." The momentum was shifting, and the group of men who had been harassing Marcus found themselves increasingly isolated. The leader looked around, realizing that public opinion was turning against them and that continuing the confrontation would only make them look worse. Ali sensed the change in dynamics and pressed his advantage. "I'm going to make sure this young man gets home safely today, and I'm going to make sure he can walk these streets without fear tomorrow and every day after that." He turned to Marcus with a warm smile. "What's your name, son?" "Marcus Washington, sir. Thank you for standing up for me. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't shown up." "Marcus, you don't need to thank me for doing what any decent person should do. But I want you to remember something important. You have just as much right to walk these streets with dignity as anyone else. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." The group of men, realizing they had lost both the moral and practical battle, began to disperse. The leader shot one last angry look at Ali and Marcus before walking away, muttering under his breath about how things were changing too fast. As the immediate tension subsided, Ali walked with Marcus toward his home, continuing their conversation along the way. The crowd followed at a respectful distance, many still amazed at what they had witnessed. "Tell me about yourself, Marcus. What are your dreams? What do you want to do with your life?" Ali asked as they walked. Marcus's eyes lit up with enthusiasm, despite the traumatic experience he had just endured. "I want to be a teacher, Mr. Ali. I want to work with kids in communities like this one, help them see that education can open doors and create opportunities." Ali nodded approvingly. "That's a noble goal, son. The world needs more teachers who understand the struggles that young people face. Have you thought about college?" "I've been saving money from my job, but it's hard. My mom works 2 jobs just to keep us afloat, and I help with the bills. Sometimes it feels like college is just a dream that's too expensive to reach." They paused at a street corner, and Ali placed his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Dreams aren't too expensive, Marcus. They're investments in the future. I want you to come by my gym tomorrow morning. There are some people I'd like you to meet and some opportunities we might be able to discuss." Marcus's eyes widened with surprise and gratitude. "Really? You'd do that for me?" "Son, when I see young people with determination and character, I see the future of our community. Helping you succeed isn't just good for you. It's good for everyone who will benefit from your teaching someday." As they reached Marcus's neighborhood, more people began to recognize Ali and gather around. Word was spreading quickly through the community about what had happened, and the story was growing with each telling. Children ran alongside them, excited to see the famous boxer in their neighborhood. Ali took time to greet everyone, signing autographs and taking pictures, but he never lost focus on Marcus and the larger message of the day. He used each interaction as an opportunity to reinforce the importance of standing up for what's right and supporting young people in their pursuit of better lives. When they finally reached Marcus's apartment building, his mother, Dorothy Washington, was waiting outside. She had heard about the incident from neighbors and was both worried about her son and amazed that Muhammad Ali had intervened on his behalf. "Mr. Ali, I can't thank you enough for what you did today," Dorothy said, her voice filled with emotion. "Marcus is a good boy, and he works so hard. It breaks my heart that he has to face that kind of treatment just for walking home from work." Ali took Dorothy's hands in his and spoke with genuine warmth. "Mrs. Washington, you've raised an exceptional young man. Marcus handled himself with dignity and courage today, and that's a reflection of the values you've instilled in him." Dorothy wiped tears from her eyes. "It's been hard since his father passed away 3 years ago. I try to do my best, but sometimes I worry that it's not enough." "You're doing more than enough," Ali assured her. "And you're not alone in this. Tomorrow I want Marcus to come to my gym. There are some scholarship programs and mentorship opportunities that might be able to help him with his college goals." The conversation continued for several more minutes, with Ali learning more about the Washington family's struggles and dreams. He was struck by their resilience and determination in the face of adversity, qualities that reminded him of his own journey from a young fighter in Louisville to the heavyweight champion of the world. As the evening began to settle over the neighborhood, Ali prepared to leave, but not before making one final promise to Marcus. "Son, what happened today was wrong, but how we respond to it will determine whether it becomes a moment of defeat or a catalyst for positive change. I want you to remember that you have allies in this fight for justice and equality." Marcus nodded, still somewhat overwhelmed by the day's events. "I will, Mr. Ali. Thank you for showing me that standing up for what's right is always worth it, even when it's scary." Ali smiled and began walking back toward his car, but the impact of the day was far from over. As news of the incident spread throughout Chicago's South Side, something remarkable began to happen. People started talking about the encounter, sharing their own stories of discrimination and discussing the importance of community support. Local radio stations picked up the story, and by evening it was being discussed on television news programs across the city. The narrative wasn't just about a celebrity helping a teenager. It was about the ongoing struggle for civil rights and the power of individuals to make a difference in their communities. That night, as Marcus sat at his kitchen table trying to focus on his homework, he found his mind wandering to the events of the day. The fear and humiliation he had felt during the initial confrontation had been transformed into something else entirely, a sense of empowerment and possibility that he had never experienced before. His mother sat across from him, still processing everything that had happened. "Marcus, I want you to understand something important about today. Mr. Ali didn't just defend you because you needed help. He defended you because he saw your potential and your worth. That's something you should never forget." Marcus looked up from his textbooks. "Mom, do you think things will really change? Do you think what happened today will make a difference?" Dorothy considered the question carefully before responding. "Change doesn't happen overnight, son, but it happens one person at a time, one act of courage at a time. What Mr. Ali did today, and what you did by standing up for yourself, that's how change begins." Meanwhile, across the city, Muhammad Ali was in his hotel room, reflecting on the day's events. He had faced many opponents in the boxing ring, but the fight against injustice and inequality was the most important battle of his life. Today had been a reminder of why he used his platform to speak out on social issues, even when it was controversial or cost him financially. Ali picked up the phone and called his trainer and close friend, Angelo Dundee. "Angelo, I want to do something special at the gym tomorrow. There's a young man I met today who represents everything we should be fighting for in this community." Dundee listened as Ali recounted the day's events and outlined his plans for the following morning. By the end of the conversation, they had developed an idea that would extend far beyond just helping Marcus. It would become a statement about the power of community support and the importance of investing in young people. As the night progressed, word continued to spread throughout Chicago about the confrontation and Ali's intervention. In barbershops, restaurants, and community centers, people were discussing not just what had happened, but what it meant for the larger struggle for civil rights and social justice. Some community leaders began organizing, recognizing an opportunity to build on the momentum of Ali's actions. They started making phone calls, reaching out to local businesses, schools, and organizations to discuss ways they could better support young people like Marcus, who were working hard to build better lives for themselves. The ripple effects of that afternoon encounter were already beginning to spread, setting the stage for something much larger than anyone could have anticipated. As Chicago slept that night, the seeds of a movement were being planted, watered by the courage of a teenager who refused to be intimidated, and the compassion of a champion who refused to look the other way. The next morning would bring surprises that no one could have predicted, transforming a single act of kindness into a powerful demonstration of what communities could accomplish when they came together around shared values of justice, opportunity, and hope. The next morning arrived with an unusual energy in the air. Marcus woke up earlier than usual, his mind still processing the events of the previous day. As he prepared for school, he couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had shifted in his world. The encounter with Muhammad Ali felt almost surreal, but the business card the champion had given him was real proof that it had actually happened. Dorothy Washington was already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast and getting ready for her first job of the day. She had barely slept, her mind racing with thoughts about her son's experience and the unexpected kindness of the world's most famous boxer. As she watched Marcus get ready for school, she noticed a change in his posture. He stood a little taller, walked with more confidence. Remember what Mr. Ali said about coming to his gym this morning? Dorothy reminded her son as he gathered his books. I called in late to work so I can walk with you. This is too important to miss. Marcus nodded, his stomach fluttering with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Mom, what if yesterday was just a one-time thing? What if he doesn't really remember what he promised? Dorothy smiled and placed her hands on her son's shoulders. Son, men like Muhammad Ali don't make promises they don't intend to keep. He saw something special in you yesterday, and I believe he meant every word he said. Meanwhile, across the city, Muhammad Ali was already at his training facility, but he wasn't preparing for his usual workout routine. Instead, he was on the phone with community leaders, local business owners, and educational advocates, sharing Marcus's story and discussing ways they could create lasting change in the community. Angelo Dundee arrived at the gym to find Ali pacing back and forth, his energy focused not on boxing, but on the social mission that had captured his attention. Champ, I've never seen you this fired up about anything except a fight. What's got you so motivated? Ali stopped pacing and looked directly at his trainer. Angelo, yesterday I met a young man who represents everything that's right about this community. He's working hard, pursuing education, helping his family, and treating people with respect, but he's being held back by the same prejudice and lack of opportunity that has held back too many young people for too long. Dundee nodded, understanding the passion in Ali's voice. So what's the plan, champ? The plan is to show this community what's possible when we invest in our young people. I've been making calls all morning and people are responding. Local business owners want to help, educators are offering mentorship, and community leaders are talking about scholarship programs. As Ali continued explaining his vision, gym staff members began arriving for the day. Word had already started spreading through the neighborhood about the previous day's incident and Ali's promise to help Marcus. Some people had heard the story on the radio during their morning commute, while others had learned about it through the community grapevine that moved faster than any news service. By 8 o'clock in the morning, something unprecedented began happening outside Ali's gym. People started gathering on the sidewalk, not just boxing fans, hoping to catch a glimpse of the champion, but community members who had been inspired by the story of standing up for what's right. Mrs. Henderson, the elderly woman who had supported Marcus the day before, arrived with her neighbor, Mrs. Johnson. They had brought homemade signs expressing support for young people in the community. Behind them came Mr. Rodriguez, who owned a local auto repair shop, and Ms. Thompson, a teacher from the nearby elementary school. The crowd continued to grow as the morning progressed. Parents brought their children, hoping to teach them about the importance of standing up for others. Local business owners closed their shops temporarily to participate in what was becoming an impromptu community gathering. Even some of the people who had witnessed the previous day's confrontation showed up, wanting to be part of the positive energy that was building. Inside the gym, Ali was becoming aware of the crowd forming outside. He looked through the window and was amazed by what he saw. Angelo, come look at this. I think we've started something bigger than we realized. Dundee joined Ali at the window and whistled in amazement. Champ, there must be 300 people out there, and more are arriving every minute. Ali's eyes sparkled with the same intensity he showed before a big fight. This is exactly what I hoped would happen. When people see others standing up for what's right, it inspires them to get involved themselves. At that moment, Marcus and his mother arrived at the gym, only to find themselves facing a crowd of several hundred people. Marcus stopped in his tracks, overwhelmed by the sight. Mom, what is all this? Why are all these people here? Dorothy was equally surprised, but quickly understood what was happening. Son, I think your story has touched more people than we realized. These folks are here to show their support for you and for what Mr. Ali did yesterday. As Marcus and his mother approached the crowd, people began to recognize the teenager from the previous day's incident. A spontaneous round of applause broke out, with people calling out words of encouragement and support. Marcus felt his eyes fill with tears, not from sadness or fear like the day before, but from the overwhelming sense of community and belonging. An elderly man approached Marcus and extended his hand. "Young man, I heard about what happened to you yesterday and how you handled yourself with dignity. I want you to know that this old man is proud of you." A young mother with 2 small children spoke up next. "My kids heard your story on the radio this morning, and they wanted to come here to meet the brave young man who stood up for himself." The crowd continued to grow, and by 9 o'clock it had swelled to nearly 500 people. Local news crews had arrived and were interviewing community members about why they had come to support Marcus and Ali's message of standing up against injustice. Inside the gym, Ali was preparing for what had become much more than a simple meeting with a promising young student. He had contacted several local scholarship coordinators, business leaders who were interested in providing internships, and educators who wanted to discuss mentorship opportunities. "Angelo, I think it's time to go outside and address this crowd. This has become bigger than just helping one young man. This is about showing what's possible when a community comes together around shared values." Ali stepped outside the gym to thunderous applause and cheers. The crowd had organized itself naturally, with people making space for Marcus and his mother to stand near the champion. Local news cameras captured every moment as Ali raised his hand to quiet the crowd. "My friends," Ali began, his voice carrying clearly across the gathered crowd, "yesterday I witnessed something that happens too often in our communities, a young person being intimidated and harassed simply because of the color of his skin. But I also witnessed something beautiful, a young man who refused to be broken by hatred and prejudice." The crowd erupted in applause, with many people shouting words of agreement and support. Ali waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "Marcus Washington represents the best of what our community can produce. He works hard, he pursues education, he helps his family, and he treats others with respect. But more than that, when faced with injustice, he stood his ground with dignity and courage." Ali gestured toward Marcus, who was standing nearby with his mother, still somewhat overwhelmed by the attention, but growing more confident with each passing moment. "Today, we're not just here to support Marcus. We're here to make a commitment to all the young people in our community who are working hard to build better lives for themselves and their families. We're here to say that when you stand up for what's right, you won't stand alone." The crowd's response was immediate and powerful. People began chanting, "We stand together," and "Support our youth." The energy was infectious, spreading through the crowd like electricity. Lee continued his impromptu speech, outlining the concrete steps that community members and local businesses were prepared to take to support young people like Marcus. Scholarship funds were being established, mentorship programs were being created, and job training opportunities were being developed. "But this isn't just about programs and money," Ali emphasized. "This is about changing the culture in our community. It's about making sure that every young person knows they have value, they have potential, and they have people who believe in them." As Ali spoke, Marcus felt a transformation taking place within himself. The fear and humiliation from the previous day were being replaced by something much more powerful, a sense of purpose and responsibility. He realized that his experience had become a catalyst for something much larger than his individual situation. When Ali finished speaking, he invited Marcus to address the crowd. The teenager hesitated for a moment, looking at his mother for encouragement. Dorothy nodded and whispered, "Tell them what's in your heart, son." Marcus stepped forward, his voice shaking slightly at first, but growing stronger as he spoke. "I never expected that walking home from work yesterday would lead to all of this. When those men were harassing me, I felt alone and scared. But Mr. Ali showed me that I wasn't alone, and all of you being here today proves that even more. The crowd listened intently as Marcus continued. I want to be a teacher someday because I believe education can change lives. But yesterday I learned something that's not taught in any textbook. I learned that when good people stand together, they can overcome hatred and create hope. The response from the crowd was overwhelming. People were wiping tears from their eyes, and many were already discussing how they could get involved in supporting young people in their community. Local business owner James Mitchell stepped forward and announced that his company would be providing part-time jobs and internships for students like Marcus. We need young people with character and determination in our businesses. This young man has shown both. Sarah Chen, a guidance counselor from the local high school, announced that she was organizing a college preparation program that would provide tutoring, test preparation, and scholarship application assistance free of charge to any student who needed it. The announcements continued as community members stepped forward to offer various forms of support. A local bookstore owner offered to donate textbooks and study materials. A retired teacher volunteered to provide free tutoring sessions. A small business owner committed to providing job training opportunities. As the morning progressed, what had started as a simple meeting between Ali and Marcus had evolved into a community-wide commitment to supporting young people and standing up against injustice. The crowd had grown to over 500 people, representing a cross-section of Chicago's South Side community. Ali was moved by the response and realized that the previous day's incident had touched something deep within the community, a desire to come together around shared values and create positive change. He had seen this kind of energy before, during the civil rights movement, but it never failed to inspire him. "My friends," Ali said, as the morning gathering began to wind down, "what we've accomplished here today is just the beginning. We've shown that when communities come together around justice and opportunity, amazing things can happen." He turned to Marcus one final time. "Son, you came here this morning as one young man with dreams and challenges. You're leaving here as a symbol of what's possible when people refuse to accept injustice and when communities commit to supporting their young people." Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also the strength that came from knowing he had the support of so many people. "Mr. Ali, I promise I'll work hard to make the most of these opportunities, and someday I'll help other young people the same way you've helped me." As the crowd began to disperse, people exchanged contact information and made plans to follow up on the commitments that had been made. The energy was positive and forward-looking, focused on building something lasting rather than just responding to a single incident. Dorothy Washington found herself surrounded by other parents who wanted to ensure their children could benefit from the programs and opportunities that were being created. She was amazed by how quickly the community had mobilized around her son's experience. Local news reporters conducted interviews with community members, capturing the spirit of cooperation and commitment that had emerged from the morning's gathering. The story was already spreading beyond Chicago, with national news outlets picking up reports about Muhammad Ali's intervention and the community response it had generated. As Marcus and his mother prepared to leave the gym, Ali pulled the teenager aside for a private conversation. "Marcus, I want you to remember something important about today. All these people didn't come here just because of what happened to you yesterday. They came because they recognized something in you that reminded them of their own hopes and dreams." Marcus listened carefully as Ali continued. "You have a responsibility now, not just to yourself and your family, but to your community. People are investing in you because they believe you can make a difference. Don't let them down." The teenager nodded solemnly. "I won't, Mr. Ali. I promise I'll work harder than ever to become the teacher I want to be, and I'll always remember that success isn't just about individual achievement. It's about lifting up others along the way." Ali smiled and shook Marcus's hand. That's exactly the right attitude, son. Now go make us all proud. As Marcus and his mother walked home through the same streets where he had been harassed just 24 hours earlier, everything felt different. The neighborhood looked the same, but Marcus's place in it had been fundamentally transformed. He was no longer just a teenager trying to avoid trouble. He was a young man with a community behind him and a future full of possibilities. The impact of those 2 days would continue to ripple through Chicago's South Side for years to come, creating lasting change that extended far beyond one teenager's experience with injustice and one champion's decision to stand up for what was right. Hey, my friends, help me by subscribing to the channel so we can reach 1,000 subscribers, even if you're watching from your TV or computer. Your subscription makes all the difference, and the algorithm will help you see more amazing stories. Leave a like or an emoji in the comments and be part of this growth.